will shape the future of our world? Often, it seems civilization seeks to conquer every inch of planet Earth. It is organizations of passionate people who can ensure the preservation of our precious wilderness and ultimately our planet. New York State's Olympic Regional Development Authority is mandated to preserve the region's Olympic legacy, advance sport and recreation, and further economic development. Operating facilities within the Catskill and Adirondack Park Forest Preserves, ORDA achieves those goals while also prioritizing stewardship of the natural environment.
So we had a once-in-a-generation opportunity to modernize these Olympic venues in Lake Placid and our ski areas throughout New York State. The benefits of this are going to be realized for decades to come. And it's little things from changing out lighting systems to LED lightings, but also big things. Gore Mountain has the largest solar array of power devoted to a ski area in North America.
We're running more efficiently. We use less power. The refrigerant that we had before had a very high global warming potential. What we have today is a refrigerant that is about half of that capability.
The differences between the old Zambonis and the new electric Zambonis is the battery efficiency of how it operates. It runs a lot cleaner, a lot smoother. With the new electric Zambonis, there are no more emissions.
Our snowmaking system that we've built in Mount Van Hoevenberg is really a one-of-a-kind on planet Earth. So FISU, the Federation of International Skiing, identified it as one of the most powerful on the planet. So we're able to make snow more quickly and more efficiently than anywhere else. And the snow guns that are on the trail, they're efficient. They use less energy and water than older systems, and we're really excited of our capabilities.
Here at the Olympic Jumping Complex, we've made some pretty good upgrades in terms of the sustainability front. We've added the frost rail system to the in-runs. They took away a lot of kind of monotonous, labor-intensive and repetitive work. We would make snow on them, we'd do them all by hand, and then we'd get a nasty spell of weather, warm weather, and we'd lose all that hard work. And we'd wind up doing that 10, 12 times a winter. So with the new frost rail system, we turn our compressors on and start chilling the track. We go through, slush the end runs in with a mixture of water and snow. We let it freeze, and they're ready to jump for the season. We've added some really nice new LED lighting to the landing hills. We've upgraded our snowmaking system to use less air and make more snow faster. And with the plastic in the summer too, we're able to keep athletes jumping on this hill really, with a couple weeks turnover in the spring and fall for pretty much 10 and a half months of the year.
The new hybrid groomer is an awesome machine. It's actually more powerful than the traditional straight diesel snowcat. So it's 20% more powerful, and it uses 20% less fuel.
The changes are day and night from where we used to be. The amount of snow guns we can run at one time is, double. These new style guns, we're saving hundreds of man hours a year by not having to drag equipment to the gun. It's stationary, it's there all season. You turn a couple little valves and you're on, and you're snapping guns on left and right.
All our upgrades equate in the end to a longer ski season. We start earlier and we extend it later at the end of the season. And I believe we're putting a better quality snow on the ground, which makes for a better experience for the skiers overall.
We work with experts, engineers, policymakers, community leaders, businesses, academics, and numerous national and international governing bodies of winter sports to create practical and innovative ways to fulfill our environmental preservation responsibility for future generations. As people who love the precious lands on which we live and work, ORDA is dedicated to always being a leader in building a more sustainable world. Just as ORDA is a powerful and positive force in the world of winter sports, ORDA is committed to serving as a powerful and positive force for the future of the Adirondack and Catskill parks here at home and for our planet's precious ecosystems. After all, every one of us has an impact on this earth. It is the one thing we all must share.
So, joining us from Clarkson University, a professor of practice at Clarkson University with lots of expertise, experience, and knowledge in the sustainability decision-making space. If you will please welcome to the stage Eric Bacchus, who will be our moderator for the next session. Come on up. I've already got the seat warm for you, sir. You're welcome. And joining him on stage, all the way from Australia, the home of my first Olympic Games, still my favorite, Sydney, our Kathy, of course, a member of the FISU Executive Committee. Martin Doulton is here. Thank you. Mr. Segos is back with us. Come on up. And representing the Olympic Regional Development Authority, its Executive Director, Mike Pratt. Let's welcome Mr. Pratt.
Well, thank you for that warm introduction. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I hope you are as well. As was announced, this is thinking about how we design the future of international sporting events and the venues for both competitions and the fans, which I'm sure some of the folks in the audience are not just student athletes, but also fans of the sport that we get to visit and see this time. So we're going to explore that, and I'm really privileged to have the opportunity to do this. We will run this panel. I'll have some opening questions. I'll ask one of them to kind of key off, but hopefully we have a dialogue between the panelists. But as you think about this, if there's a question in your mind, maybe if there's a little time at the end, we'll take an audience question for those in the room. Sorry for those online, I can't exactly do that, but I will repeat the question in the audience so you can hear that if that comes up. So the first question we have for this dialogue, in the session we just had, we were talking a lot about the energy sector. How about talking now a little bit about the specifics of energy here at this Games or any FISU Games, related to your portfolio, specifically in the specific venues we have with Orta or the Adirondack Park in the Adirondack region, or for the FISU Games worldwide. And what responsibility do we have to think about how to make that better? So, Basil, if you would take that first.
Sure, happy to. And hi again, everybody. So listen, I mean, we are so fortunate in the North Country to have an abundant supply of renewable power, right? I mean, we heard about Hydro-Quebec's contributions in northern New York. We've got NYPA as well that's generating an enormous amount of clean power. So we're in a part of New York State right now that is whose carbon footprint is very low, naturally. It's also surrounded by trees, right? Which is an incredible sink for carbon. So we think a lot of very, very close partners. DEC is very close partners with Orta. We've been side by side over the last few years as they've been modernizing all of their amazing facilities and also preparing for these games, and been a huge supporter and fan of the fact that they're just doing exactly what they showed on TV, and it's all real. To see it all in motion right now is frankly incredible. So we see this as a big opportunity, right? Showing other ski resorts here in New York, showing other operations in New York, whether they're recreational or not, that there's a path forward that can actually save an authority or a business money. That's a really big deal, and ultimately that's what New Yorkers want. They want that the cheapest path to something that's successful and pride-worthy, and that's what these games, I think, are showing. So we're thrilled to see that the carbon footprint is so low in light of all of the people that have been able to make it here.
Great. And Mike, maybe you could key off the specifics. I mean, you had a wonderful video there that showed so much you're doing, but you're part of this. You're in the middle of it. Can you talk a little about your part of this and how you see it?
Sure. Thanks, Eric. Hello, everybody. I think what I was thinking about watching the first panel is all the infrastructure that was being discussed to power cities, and the romance of sport gets in the way of the operations and developments of sporting facilities and venues. Each venue has so much infrastructure that's behind the scenes, and that's where all the opportunities are for making a difference, whether you're upgrading something to be more efficient or trying to save energy or replacing something. And ultimately, a lot of the things that are done for a stewardship reason or cause also positively impact the guest experience. So something as simple as a radiant system at an entranceway to a building keeps the salt and sand from being tracked in, and then the guest experience is much better. So a lot of infrastructure, and we've looked at all our facilities holistically with all the big components of infrastructure, trying to make differences with every single component of the infrastructure, whether it's substations or electrical distribution systems or transformers, or whether it's the chlorination systems and potable water systems, or the building systems, or the wastewater treatment facilities, and the list goes on and on. So there's a lot of little things that make a big difference, or there's big things but ultimately, the whole social, environmental, and business decisions do seem to mesh well together when you look at an entire facility.
Great, thanks. And maybe Martin, you could speak a little bit about where FISU fits into this and your thoughts about where things have been or where they're going.
Absolutely, Eric. Thanks very much for the introduction. And first of all, I'd like to acknowledge the First Nations peoples upon whom we host this meeting and all our events, and to pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and future. That's actually a standard thing that we have across Australia with our many Indigenous peoples, and I think it was very important to acknowledge today the peoples here. FISU, for those that don't know what FISU is an organisation that was built out of great trauma, I suppose, in the early 40s for the events that were occurring then. And FISU now is a custodian of sport globally for the university movement. So we have 164 national members across the world. They look after many thousands of universities, and within there hundreds of thousands of students. So we have an opportunity to both influence and develop investments, I suppose, across those areas. What we have here in terms of the FISU component for events is very clearly working closely with the organisers and the host cities to ensure that the guest experience, as Mike said, is the best it can be. So we work through our attribution process and our contracts to actually make sure that as best the student-athlete experience is as good as it can be. Over the years, the work with our host cities and our organisers has actually improved in terms of both their energy usage, because they're great costs of putting on events like this. So it's an emerging and developing experience. And I think this Games in particular is actually probably going to be the first one that we've actually had a full carbon audit of the event. And I think that's a really great line in the sand for all the future activities that we've got moving forward.
Absolutely. And I think that term legacy is an important thing to turn to now. Winter sports have had a long legacy worldwide, but I think very acutely here in Lake Placid. Running dog sleds from E-Town to Placid happened well before the 1932 Olympic Games and, of course, the 1988 Games. And, of course, skiing the face has been a thing. Even people like Teddy Roosevelt might have done that back in the day. How do communities like Lake Placid hold on to that heritage, that culture, that background, and deal with the ecological challenges and economic challenges all at the same time while technology is changing, climate change is happening? And how did host games as big as the FISU Games? I'm going to turn this to Mike first, who's a native right here, and he's been part of this heritage for so long. So, Mike?
Sure. The Lake Placid Olympic venues are all approaching the 100th year anniversary of hosting the 1932 Olympics. And when we had this opportunity to modernize the venues, we made conscious decisions to really embrace the heritage, but do it to set us up so we could be successful for decades to come with sustainable, efficient upgrades that basically the infrastructure would be built to allow operations for a long time. But part of the conscious decisions were to make sure that the facilities could be vibrant year-round. We chose to do our planning where we placed the elite athletes in close proximity to the recreational enthusiasts, right next to the spectators, and it gave the sports a unique ability to market themselves this way. And then also, there was always a bottom line appropriateness box to check. And if some idea for an improvement had too much neon or bells and whistles that just didn't feel right, then we didn't do it. We stuck with appropriateness to allow us to maintain the character and the heritage that the legacy required, and give us the ability to move forward successfully in the future.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that I got to speak up for, since I've been privileged to work with ORDA and the whole Olympic region for several years, is that your commitment not only for what you do, but how that ties into community. So for those who don't know, the New York Olympic region is a LEED certified gold community, and ORDA was a leader in bringing us to that table saying, we're not just going to do it, we're going to prove we did it by going out and getting a third-party certification. And so thankfully I was able to be the project manager on working through that. But what ORDA did was not outside of the community, it was in concert with and in full partnership with the community. And I think that speaks a lot about the kind of the nature of how we do this to bring communities together. So Mazel or Martin, any thoughts about this particular concept of legacy and how we bring that forward?
Certainly would echo everything that Mike said, but I mean, listen, the choice of Lake Placid was such a good one, right? We had facilities here. They needed to be upgraded. We wanted to upgrade them and modernize them. And I think, you know, one of the, as games are conceived, that idea of integration with the community is so vital, right? What does the community look like now? What will it look like during construction? What will it look like during the games? And then after everyone leaves, what is left behind, right? This is the perfect example. This is an ascendant community, right? Everyone here was working to make this area more modernized and beautiful, integrated with nature. During construction, worked very well. And of course, when the games are over, we have beautiful venues that U.S. Olympic team is going to use, that New Yorkers use on a regular basis. So all of that is really important, that integration with the community and making community a part of it. And also making non-traditional communities, right, connecting people from outside the region into this, using this as a venue to talk about the issues that we're facing as a society, and having kids there as the voice. I say kids, I guess, they're really university students. But, you know, look, the kids will be all right. Right? They are the ones right now learning the most critical issues that are confronting us as a world, so that now they're part of this incredible not just the planning process of the games, but the implementation of the games, and we'll be able to tell the story of Lake Placid and the really great work that this place has done to make these a responsible and pride-worthy event.
I thank you actually for mentioning kids, because one of the key partners in the region has been the Lake Placid Central School District. So right. This went through K through 12. They were a key part of this. So we talk about kids. We are literally talking about children, learning about this from day one, which I think is exciting. So Martin, anything you want to add to this?
Well, I've already seen the interaction between our athletes from the 46 nations that we have here with the local community. And I think that's such an important part of any major event. It shouldn't be a major event coming in, dumping on the local community, shutting the streets down, really cheesing people off when they can't drive somewhere. All that, you know, that can happen. And you know, some of the other major events that we see around the world. The FISU events actually are quite unique because the students are so engaged, not just with the sports event, because often in a winter sport event, it's just the alpine skiing together, or it's just the figure skating together. When I was coming in on the bus, the Hong Kong figure skater was so excited to be able to chat to the ice hockey teams. And then it's beyond that, because they don't get the chance to do that, or the alpine skiers. And I think the opportunity for that, the legacy is actually more than just the event. It's actually the ongoing memories that people have. You know, some of the people I've been talking to in the street came here for the 1980 Olympics and are still here, love the place, and are so excited about this event because it rekindles the memories that they've had of those. So,
and that's great. One of the things I enjoyed most last night about the opening ceremony for the games was when the Ukrainian team came on to the ice, and it was a standing ovation for them last night. That was just so powerful. I don't think we can forget the state of geopolitics today. That's in the bag. And in a place like here, we're certainly seeing the impact of that through this week and through the next several days. So how do we think about then the equities between people, between athletes, between the community members and those athletes, or maybe the lack of those equities, and thinking about how this games or the facilities and the infrastructure and the things that bring fans and competitors together can bridge those divides? Martin, maybe you can take a kick at that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Eric. I think the broad principle is that when we attribute to games, we do it on the principle of equity, and that everybody is equal all of the time and have the opportunity to equally compete in an event. Now, we know that there are different economic circumstances, there are different political circumstances. So as the need arises, we take the opportunity to support athletes and delegations to come here through various programs. A solidarity program, I suppose, for want of a better word, is a way of being able to do that, so that we can get a broad breadth of, to see the Haitian figure skater come through last night wow, who would have thought? But that broadens the opportunity in the eyes of and the ears of the world community to see that it's not just for a few privileged nations for that to occur. And I think that openness to encourage more and more of our members to develop and compete on the world stage is one step forward.
Great. And I understand, Basil, you were recently in Ukraine. So maybe you could speak about how that felt for you last night and thinking about what's going on here this next week and a half.
I did have a chance to go on a humanitarian mission. The first two athletes I saw when I got off my own mode of transport last night were two Ukrainians. And I said, Slava Ukraini! It was sort of a magic moment last night, you're right, to see them finally come out, right? Just in alphabetical order, they came out, and the U.S. came out two thereafter. To have them sharing the ice together was pretty remarkable. You're right, I mean, look, we are in a delicate moment in history, global history right now. I mean, there are always delicate moments. We talked about climate change earlier. Of course, that's a delicate moment in our future. But we're in a delicate moment right now, and I think we quite often ask athletes to solve problems for us, right? We put our hopes on the shoulders of athletes. We put our hopes on the shoulders of games, and I think it's partly an outlet for that because we bring people together, right? Reducing those inequities and having the ice out there as a home for so many people from around the world. And I think it's really, how do you expose more people to the experience of what's going on here right now? Because ESPN is going to be covering the games. They're covering it last night, right? There's plenty of media now covering what's going on here. The story of Ukraine being on the ice right now, last night, going around the world. I think we need to constantly look for ways to expose the public to sports as a mode for togetherness. And then, when it comes to university students, they're the ones right now who frankly are coming up asking different questions that we never asked when we were in college, right? And they're demanding different outcomes, and they are the best ambassadors for these things, whether they're in sport or not. They were the drivers behind the state's climate law, right? They really were. They were the ones marching in the street. So that to me gives me a lot of optimism right now that whether it's Lake Placid globally or Ukraine on the front lines, that there are some amazing young people driving change, and the games here is a good example of that.
Absolutely. I get the privilege as a professor at a university to work with these young people every day, and it is just their creativity, their passion, their yearning for knowledge, not just going with the line, but actually digging in is amazing. What I also appreciate is they want to get their hands dirty. We saw this again in the video. I love that Mike not only featured in the, as CEO of Orta, putting that together and thinking about it, not just the people that are the managers that are there, but also the workers that are doing this. So thinking about the venues that you've developed and redeveloped here, Mike, can you talk a little bit about thinking about how you brought the inclusivity in bringing people together and how the venues themselves do that for us now based upon what you've been doing?
Well, certainly, Eric. It's a much smaller lens to look at the venues that, compared to the global stage that was being discussed by Basil. But we have a lot of opportunities to improve inclusiveness. A lot of developmental programs, instructional programs, but also working with the Paralympic sports, and then being having these Olympic venues. The national bobsled teams for Brazil, Jamaica, and Israel will call Lake Placid their home. We host a lot of internationals and try to use our facilities to improve the sports, to try to help some of the developing nations in the sports and shorten the learning curve that they're behind with the engineering of different equipment. So there's a lot of kind of field leveling that goes on with our facilities year round. And the United States national teams are very good hosts also, working with developing nations in the sports to try to help them out too.
Also, Mark, if I can also add, I would like to congratulate you on some of the facility innovations that you've put in. I was last night, the gender-neutral bathrooms, for instance. I think those, the small steps, but they do create a great deal of well-being and homeliness. And also, congratulations to the organising committee for the friendliness of the volunteers and the support staff. We've been in the Olympic Centre, wandering around the bowels of it, having a good sneak around as you do, and your team there have been so open and welcoming and proud to show what they've got. So I think again that's part of the inclusion is that there's no such thing as a dumb question. Could be a dumb Aussie every now and again, but the element is that it's actually around the opportunities for individuals from places that are learning to learn from the learned. This is a good case in point, and again, thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. One of the opportunities we had when we redeveloped at Mount Van Hoevenberg is that facility hosts 6 different Olympic sports, and we embraced multi-use occupancy. So the biathletes are right next to the bobsledders, or right next to the Nordic combined skiers, right next to the lugers, and the cross-country skiers and the skeleton athletes. And that's created a lot of synergies too, and the cross-marketing opportunities, the improved friendships, and there's just a lot of positives that came from what seems like a simple decision to provide one awards plaza and one event management facility with the locations for the drug testing facilities for 6 different sports. And in hindsight, it just seems like such a no-brainer, and it turned out so positive. But it was kind of pushing a chain for a little bit in order to get everybody on board with that simple philosophy of multi-use occupancy.
I think the message is we're all in this together. So we start talking about Save Winter, right? This community recognizes the challenge, and we're all in it together, the athletes. And one of the things I've enjoyed in working with the Olympic region is that you're across the table with a community leader who is a Olympic athlete who was a ski jumper, but now is so passionate about keeping this place the way it is. And so bringing the people together, it's not something you always think about, but where we go and where we spend our time indoors is where we often are seeing those things. And so having meaningful facilities where that happens is a huge part of that. And I think that's an important touch point. And one of the things that is a key part of the evaluations we're doing with the community is having metrics that go behind that. And so, everything from how is the high school student outcomes to what's the health, care going on in the community. And I think those metrics have been key. And so maybe, Mike, if I could just have you touch a little bit more on the key metrics and how that has helped you in thinking about these games, as we go forward, to think about not just now for the games, but also beyond that, and why that was so important for you at ORDA in thinking about how the things would go forward.
Well, the science of snowmaking when I got into the ski industry was voodoo pins and trail maps. And, right now we know how much kW each snow gun requires. We know how many cubic feet of air and gallons per minute of water it can push. And what our goals have been with the snowmaking systems, which are the biggest energy users, is to make the same amount of snow cumulatively over the course of a season, but do it in a much shorter, compressed time period. So those reduced hours are hours that we don't have to operate compressors, and that's where all the energy savings comes from. So a modern snow gun has a nice analogy to a LED light bulb. You know, the impacts to the production, you know, are the same. It's just so much energy savings, and it allows us to, again, do the same amount of work but much quicker. It allows the skiers to get on the slopes quicker, you know, we've kind of been struggling to do year-to-year evaluations through all our construction and our modernization, but at Gore Mountain we had a trend going for 6 straight years where we made the same amount of snow, we did it in less hours, we ran more lift days, and our annual KWH load reduced every single year.
And I think that was one of the key things that's been a part of our partnership. That's been true for not just Orta, but you look at Lake Placid as a village, they changed all their lighting to LED. They've been looking at how they can do it. So they can produce the same, actually better quality streetscape for less energy, right? They can do things, and oh, by the way, better outcomes, wider sidewalks. If you haven't walked through Main Street, please make sure you do while you're here. It is a complete upgrade from where it was only 2 years ago. A lot of, yes, there was capital expenditure, but while they were doing that, they were also looking at stormwater outflows and make sure Mirror Lake does not get all the salt intake. We've been a lot of things going on, and maybe you guys, maybe Basil, you could talk a little bit about that part of kind of how you've been evaluating the environmental health around here and how it's important to what DEC does.
Well, there's been incredible improvements. I mean, here and statewide, right? In the last 10 years, we put in an extraordinary amount of money, starting with my predecessor, Joe Martens, up there, getting communities money that they need, right? You mentioned the upgrades here in Lake Placid with street lighting. It's now over 300 communities in New York State that have done the same thing. They said they want to become what's called a climate smart community. They come to us for designation, then they come to us for funding. We help them offset the cost of installing some of the streetlights, which we did here in Lake Placid. And guess what? They're all saving money now, right? They didn't have to change their bulbs every year and a half. They're doing it every 5 years now. They're putting in EV stations. They're finding better ways to control the flow of flood water. All of that saving time and money on the backs of departments of public works and streets that are otherwise closed, businesses impacted, you know, homeowners that can't get to their houses because of floodwaters. So we're really, honestly, in New York at a bit of a golden age of funding for the environment. The governor and the voters in the legislature put $4.2 billion toward a bond act this year, $4.2 billion bond act for New York's environment to get at many of the things we just talked about. $4.5 billion more for clean water. We're now dealing with this large this program the governor announced about, so-called Cap and Invest program, which ultimately would drive down emissions and put money into electrification. So the great work that Lake Placid is doing and the speed at which they did it is going to be replicated in many other communities over the next few years. And honestly, it's going to make New York one of those states that is able to compete because it has protected its environment. And we know places that don't value their environment end up suffering long term.
Absolutely. And putting on my hat as a former chair of the U.S. Green Building Council upstate New York, I just want to make mention of a key partner that's within your department. Let her boss know she's doing a great job. Dazzle Ekblad was our climate champion of the year this year, thanks to what CSC has done across the state and the impacts it's making. So Mark, maybe you can think about, you have a campus initiative that you guys think about in FISU that you encourage people to be part about. Can you talk a little bit about that initiative?
Absolutely, yes. The Healthy Campus initiative is actually a program where there's about 100 elements covering all 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And it creates the opportunities for each university to improve in that particular area. They can highlight and focus on a certain SDG, or they can cover all of those. But it actually uplifts and upskills, I suppose, the practitioners on the ground, and the students, and the multifaceted parts of the organisation that they actually have. And it's an ongoing, I wouldn't say an accreditation program, but it certainly builds capacity in the university. So for more details, go to the website.
Absolutely, thank you for that. So I'm thinking about this. One of the special things about these particular games is they're returning, right? We've had 2 Olympic events, 1932 and 1980, the 1972 FISU games. It's been said the most sustainable thing you do is a thing you already have. The most sustainable building is a building you already have. Don't build a new one. Use the ones you have. What sets apart these communities is where we're using them. And Basil, you brought that up earlier. I'm going to frame this first to you, Martin. When thinking about future FISU games, is that going to be a key part of some of the accreditation you're thinking about, or attribution you're going to do in thinking about the future games?
The simple answer is yes, Eric. The more complicated answer is that the attribution contract that Lake Placid signed in '72 pales into insignificance to the attribution contract that was signed for 2023. The level of detail, the level of standards, the level of minimum expectations for transport, athlete accommodation, etc., changes because the modern times, those sort of aspects have changed. So the element that we're looking at as part of that review of the host city bidding is actually now a much more in-depth approach to the carbon footprint that the host city has in the future. So obviously it does make sense that a old facility that is repurposed is having less of an impact than a brand new facility. But at the same time, sometimes the sports change so much that the old facilities, it's almost impossible to renew. So it does make sense then to start again. So there's a whole raft of really detailed considerations that are put in place. But certainly our future hosts, Rhine-Ruhr, Chungcheong for 27, Torino for 2025, most of those facilities are now repurposed, renewed, reinvigorated, and the legacy of the communities that have had those in the past, it's now strengthening their experience for the future.
One of the things that's very acute here is we have, not only is this a great winter sports place, this is a year-round resource and recreation venue for the world, the largest parks in the world that's protected the way it is and regulated the way it is. Thinking about this, having more and more of these events as one of the key people that manages the Adirondack Park Preserve. Maybe Basil, you could talk about your thoughts about, is it a good thing to come back here over and over again, or is it a challenging thing that we should think about differently?
Yes and yes.
I wanted to give you an easy question.
I mean, absolutely. It's a great thing for Lake Placid. It's a great thing for the Adirondacks. Great thing for New York, right? To be able to host games again and showcase the Empire State, which is not just the beautiful, historic Manhattan, right? It's a large state, a very diverse state as well. So we're so thrilled. I was as thrilled as anybody last night to see all the competitors come from around the world into this place that we call home. And I think we're well positioned to pursue games again, right? I'm not going to speak for Mike. I'm sure he's tired. Certainly FISU. But we've made generational investments here in the Adirondacks, summer and winter, right? The same is the case down in the Catskill area. New York City sports venues are fantastic. I mean, we've been modernizing the state very aggressively over the last decade. So I think we're well set up to host future games of any kind, and ultimately make sure those games are again integrated into the community in a consultative way, and incorporating the communities that have historically been marginalized. Right, environmental justice communities, our indigenous nations, making them early on part of the partners that we turn to for how to craft games.
Great, and maybe Mike, you can talk about. Do you want to do this again?
Absolutely. The Olympic Authority's event schedule is very robust. We have right after these FISU championships. We have the Empire State Games coming in. We're have the first ski jumping World Cup in North America in 21 years in February. Beginning of March, we're hosting the NCAA Division I Alpine and Nordic Championships. We're hosting the ECAC Men's Hockey Championships in March. And then the end of March, beginning of April, we're hosting the World Championships for synchronized figure skating. Over the next couple of years, we've got luge World Cups, bobsled World Cups, World Championships for bobsled skeleton, some biathlon events. So a very robust event calendar. And the big difference between an event like the FISU championships here and our one-off events is the simultaneous multi-sport events, which create their own challenges. But you know, we're up to the challenge. We're really looking forward to the future. We've invested in tremendously efficient infrastructure that will carry us into the next few decades in a very good shape. And I think to go back to your original question about the rebuilding and hosting at existing sites, you know, we're certainly so proud of our heritage, but I have to give a shout out to all the Olympic Authority staff. Here in the last 6 years, we've been very busy doing a lot of modernization. It was a once-in-a-generation opportunity, and every single venue has so many stakeholders that are passionate about it. We did not miss a single operating season at a venue.
Which is amazing. If you saw some of the construction that's been going on in these facilities, you'd be amazed what they were able to do to keep things going at the same time building them. We do have time for maybe one audience question. So I see a hand raised in the back. So if you could speak loud enough so the audience here can hear it, I can hear it, and I can repeat it to the people online. Oh, do you? Okay, we have a mic. 1 second.
Hi, my name is Jill Hank. I'm the Clean Energy Program Director at the Adirondack North Country Association, which is based out of Saranac Lake. We implement a handful of NYSERDA and DC programs in the North Country. My question is probably for Martin, but hopefully Basil and Mike, you have also talked about this with Martin. You had mentioned a full carbon audit of the games, and I'm wondering if you could talk more about the methodology behind collecting that data and whether or not there's going to be a document for the public or the North Country or any of the participating students to review after the games.
I think thanks very much for the question. It's such a new and emerging thinking, I suppose, that there's a lot of different ways of being able to measure carbon emissions. Carl and Jensen here in the Lake Placid Organising Committee has great experience in that, and I think we will have information available to the public on the carbon emissions that this Games has created and generated, and also the programs that have been designed to try and avoid, reduce, and offset those emissions as well. So it's a bit of a balanced thing. It's a learning process. It's not going to be a purely seminal scientific outcome, but I think that will be at least a good start for all the future projects as we move through. Hopefully that's not fudged the answer, but it's such a new and emerging process. And certainly from a host city perspective and from an order perspective, those organisations are actually driving FISU's understanding of climate action, and we're learning from them as much as vice versa. So.
Yeah, I'll just mention to that specific question, one of the things that ORDA has funded is Clarkson University to do the update to the Lead for Communities program. As part of that, we're going to be checking in on their metrics, and so including in those metrics is the greenhouse gas emissions that come out of all the ORDA facilities as part of their energy profile. So, and that will be part of a public document. That's going to be some time, but we'll be doing that analysis.
Martin, I'll just add in that what we're doing is capturing the scope emissions for travel primarily, so all of the ground transportation and the air transportation. We are not venturing into capturing that data for the venues. So we'll be reporting out, Jill, you'll be able to see our data on the ground transportation and air travel.
So we'll take one more question. This gentleman had his hand up over here, and I think we should, maybe if we can get a microphone to him real quick. I think we do have maybe one more. That was pretty short, so that was good. Well, we don't want to keep the people online want to be able to hear your question as well, so that would save having to repeat it.
Thank you first, and Hung Wei Guan from Ithaca College, and it's a great honor to be able to be part of this event. And I teach as a faculty, and FISU is based on the university organization. And I really appreciate Mike and everybody talking about prepare future leaders from students, athletes. And I'm running some winter sport operation programs, which was supported by ORDA previously, and thank you. And I look forward to collaboration. And I have a question concerning the culture and education. I was involved in the Youth Olympic Games culture and education programs when it started. Do you feel we have a competition between the FISU games versus the Olympic Youth Olympic Games, and which I hope we can promote more educational programs for more people, more students to be aware of this sustainability or any issues facing the world. Thank you very much.
Good, Martin.
I'll go, yeah. Look, the International University Sport Federation and the International Olympic Committee are very close partners. We literally live a couple of kilometers away from each other in Lausanne as head offices. And there's a great symbiotic approach in the sense that the Youth Olympic Games covers an earlier age range of students coming through. And we hope that then those students will then go and play in the games that FISU runs, which has an 17 to 25 year age group, and then from there they go into an Olympic pathway, I suppose. So there's very much a close relationship in terms of that whole pathway through. So I don't think there's any conflict in any of those sorts of aspects, but often we have people moving from one group to the next quite easily and seamlessly.
Well, great. So in our last 5 minutes, the title of this is The Future of International Sporting Events, Competition Defense. We have been talking a little bit about more in the present and certainly thinking the future, but putting on your hats and holding you to none of these predictions, looking 10 years ahead, where do you see things from each of your portfolios? So state agency, an authority overseeing these venues, and of course the FISU games. Where do you see things 10 years from now? And I'll let you all figure out who wants to go first in this one.
Well, they're looking at me. 10 years. So, I mean, luckily our planning processes for climate are 10, 20, 30 years out. So we are actually physically planning right now, launching policies, doing investments that then will begin paying off over that timeline. The Bond Act I mentioned, for example, envisions sort of a 10-year spend out of $4.2 billion. So look, we envision our state to be extraordinarily strong from a community perspective, right? The investments we're going to make, again, air and water, clean air, water, engaging traditionally marginalized communities and improving conditions that they've been suffering from over the years. So my guess is New York will be far stronger in 10 years than it would have been otherwise, but for those investments. We're just a slice of the world, right? And we get wins from elsewhere around the world. So what we're trying to do is inspire other states, cities, nations to do similar things to what we do. That's why the Games is such a good venue to talk about this. We're so fortunate to have the Games embrace Save Our Winter, because it helps to cross borders and talk about these problems that are really global in nature. So my hope is we can continue to lead here in New York, but that others will jump along with us and be part of this global collective. And I'm really optimistic that's going to be the case. Great.
Martin or Mike?
Yeah, Mike, I'll finish off.
Mike's next, okay.
Okay. You know, life's about compromise, and everything's an evolution, but I think there's going to be a little bit of a pushback from organizations like FISU and like facilities like the Olympic Authority to different sports requirements. The sports have, over the last probably 15 years, have changed standards dramatically. And a lot of it has been because the athletes have gotten bigger and faster and stronger. And some of it's been that the equipment's changed. But it's required a lot of change of facilities. And I think that the facilities aren't able to continually change to the whims of sport. So I think there's going to be a little bit of some hard discussions, I think, between sports and organizations to see who's ready, or else it's going to really limit where certain sports can go. And we're going to have to be careful about that.
Thank you.
All right. I'd like to see by 2031 every single sporting organisation around the world signed up to the United Nations Sport for Climate Action, and that each of them will have exceeded the commitments to reduce their carbon emissions by 50% by that time, down to a lot less. Otherwise, we won't be coming back to a winter sports event in 2050 or something along those sort of lines. So if that's a start, that will create a great opportunity and a great uplift in understanding by not just the sports organisations who sometimes set standards that facility and having a facility hat on, I can tell you that it's a pain in the derriere to actually have to keep updating and changing because of a whim of a sport or because of the aspect. And sometimes that creates a lot of cost and impact. The impact is critical. So I think that if we can help everybody, including our 164 national associations, all the universities that we're associated with, all our host cities moving forwards, are all part of that on the same page, that's a bloody good start. The next thing is I also like to see in 2031 that we have already worked out that we're coming back to Lake Placid in 2033, because 40 years is a long time between drinks. And it would be really, really cool to be able to come back to a venue where we have a lot of affinity together and not just do it on a long-term cycle, but to come back and experience the next level again in 10 years' time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you all for listening to this conversation. I wanted to echo something you just said. This is just a bloody good start to the conversation today. I think we want to have many more of these conversations. I look forward to hearing what the rest of the conference myself, but I'm hoping you are as well. So thank you to Basil, Mike, and Martin, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. So thank you so much. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Great job. Let's give him a round of applause one more time, everyone. Great job, Mike.